Welcome back to the We Call BS podcast. It's me, Andrew Deutsch, and my cohort in crime, Lydia Sugarman. And today we're going to get on a delicate subject. And hopefully by the end of this, you won't know where either of us stand in terms of the topic, but we're going to be calling BS on religion and politics in the workplace. And I'm going to give a few examples of things that I've seen that will define what the heck we're talking about. I was in an organization years ago where the CEO brought everyone to a meeting to give a lecture about voting for the upcoming presidential election, to let them know that if they didn't vote the right way, they could all lose their jobs because one of the people was anti-business, the other was pro-business. As far as I know, it's completely illegal what went on. But I thought it was unique to me. And in the lab that I experienced that in one company, maybe it happened. But in the past months, I've heard it happening multiple times in many different forms. On the same note, I recall being in a company where one of the guys on the team was an atheist and was asked to lead grace for a company event. And his response was, "That's not something I do. I'd be more comfortable if somebody else did it." And within 3 days, they found 12 reasons for one of the top employees in the company to lose his job. So I'm
Well,
curious.
that's definitely bullshit.
Well, it's absolutely bullshit. The problem is proving it. It's the guy giving the talk about the president is one thing. A guy losing his job because he didn't want to say grace at a meeting is another. It's, how are you going to prove, how are you going to tie that to that? And the reality is it shouldn't be a matter of whether it's legal, not legal. It's wrong. And that's not, businesses don't have that right. I mean, there's that Hobby Lobby as a company, which I'll call
Yeah.
out, that my understanding, and I hope I'm not factually incorrect on this, but the allegation was that they actually paid more for the company's insurance, medical insurance for the employees, to prevent them from being able to have, for example, birth control and things that the corporate doesn't allow. Chick-fil-A has a history of making people disappear that don't align with their religious ideals. Um, so
So,
those are examples.
so in the instance in the case of the CEO saying "my way or the highway" or
Mhm.
other, how how do they even find out how you voted? Because the whole thing about voting in this country in
Mhm.
the US is the the right to, privacy. That's why there are
Mhm.
the privacy shields around every voting booth.
Yeah.
So, and why nobody can go in with you unless they need to assist you. And then it has to be somebody who is at the poll and trained to do that
Yeah.
normally, or
Yeah.
or a caregiver.
Well, one
But
on that, Lydia, one of the stories that I heard was the a guy's supervisor came in the morning and saw a specific bumper sticker on a car and told that employee, your job's at risk if you leave your car in our parking lot with that sticker on it. That if your chances of getting promoted, anything else, and you'll never know that that's the reason because nobody's going to tell you. But I suggest as your supervisor, I'm not telling you have to take it off your car, but I'm suggesting that it does you a disservice to have that sticker on your car.
well, I can appreciate that heads up. And I'd probably, depending on how much I loved the job, needed the job,
Mhm.
maybe already interviewing for other jobs. I may or may
Yeah.
not remove the sticker, probably, you know, but then we get into First Amendment rights. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah. No, I absolutely. Well, it's funny. Everybody believes in First Amendment rights as long as that person agrees with you.
exactly.
I can say anything horrible that I want, and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, wait a minute. I can respond, can I? Don't I have the right to respond to your horrible thing? It's kind of funny how it keeps going in that direction. Another person just recently said that she got absolutely destroyed by someone in her office because they happened on her TikTok and saw a video of her at a rally for a candidate that she supported. And the same day I heard that story, I heard from another person that on their Facebook profile, they had a comment about whether, I'm not going to say if they were pro or against, but a comment, in the, you have the ring around you and it says something about your vaccination stance. And it caused her, one person saw it, shared it with everybody in the office, and she took all sorts of crap because of her stance on vaccines. And again, I'm not going to say if I'm pro or against. I'm just, it's an example of where, does your private ideology, politically, religiously, or lack of religion, or any of those things, does your workplace have any reason to bother you with it if you're a high performing employee within a company, or even a bad performing? The day that you're hired to do specific jobs for the company,
Right.
and if you're doing them well, but you pray to a rock in your backyard as opposed to a deity,
If
is
you,
that
yeah, if you're fulfilling all of your job duties according to the job description for the position for which you were hired, nothing else is relevant.
mm-hmm,
The only thing that I can think of would be like if you're working for a nonprofit that
mm-hmm,
is aligned with a particular religion or political stance or party or whatever,
mm-hmm,
then you then part of the interview process should include finding out if you're in alignment with
mm-hmm,
all of that
yep,
because it's what do I want to say? It's part of the fabric of working at that organization and that job.
mm-hmm,
Then we get into, everybody loves to talk about work-life balance.
yeah,
Well, this is definitely, a different aspect of work-life balance.
yeah,
Where does work end and your private life begin?
yeah. And there's an interesting commentary on this, which is that companies are very much focused on the work culture and the culture of the people and how people work together. And I can see, and I've seen it happen, where a super high performing, usually is the top sales guy in the company in these scenarios, is the most hated guy in the building because their very presence and the way that they behave and the way they talk to people and all of that is it screws with the culture of the business. And I've seen top salespeople be fired not because of their performance in sales, but because of the damage they do to the culture. So if you are a high performer and you're actively putting your ideology out there in a way that makes people uncomfortable, I can see
Well,
that issue. Um,
yeah,
it's like a
yeah.
guy from some, I'm going to just say cult so that it doesn't reflect on any, but someone who's a cult member who spends all day inviting people to cult events and talking cult stuff and doing cultish things, making other people uncomfortable. That's where I start to see an issue.
Well, he's
But
not doing his job. She or he
yeah.
is not doing their job. They're not focused on their job. But in like company culture, I mean, the example that you brought up, it's not necessarily always the top salesperson who, granted, they're disliked. They're disliked for a lot of reasons. Number one, they make more money than anybody else, other than like the C-suite and the
Mm-hmm.
CEO, probably. And a lot of times in young companies, they are making more money than the CEO. And there's resentment about that because it's like that person looks like they're not working. They're not working that hard, and people don't understand everything that goes in behind that to get those deals done.
Mm-hmm.
But there's, always this ongoing discussion, or there has been, in startups, if you get this rock star programmer in the company, you recruit that person, and they're essential to creating the program, the technology for your company, but they're assholes
Mm-hmm.
and everybody else is miserable. Do you keep them or not?
Yep.
The general consensus is you fire them because they're destroying the company culture.
Yep.
But then, back to, you know, the original discussion about policies that are not in alignment with performing the job, bro culture, you know.
Mhm.
And it's come back to bite the bros in the ass in a few high profile situations like Kalanick at Uber and the entire I wouldn't okay, we don't like to talk in absolutes. Much of the upper management were guys, and there was real hurtful, damaging discrimination
Mhm.
against various employees due to this bro culture. I think imposing religion and religious and political ideologies is is commensurate with bro culture.
Yeah. I,
Same difference.
yeah, I recall working in an organization. There was a guy who had absolutely zero interest. His family, his history, very proud of the fact that he has no religion. That's his thing. And he was working in an organization that was basically evangelicals and Mennonites and Amish were what was there. And when they would invite him to these different things, and it was always uncomfortable. And he knew that he was the odd man out. I've had this conversation with him
Why
dozens of
did he even take the job?
because it was in his field and he is an expert in what he does. He's a marketing guy that I know who's really, really good, a good strategist. But every day he'd come to work and they want to pray before meetings, they want to do other things, which is fine if that's your thing. But but his right to not be part of that, he didn't sign up to work for a company to join their church. He joined the company because it was a job and he was doing it. And eventually he just couldn't put up with it anymore. And he had to move on because they made his life miserable because it wasn't something that he played. For me, and I'll give you an example for me, I don't have any interest in sports. I've never watched a game. It's just not something I'm into. I have many, many interests, hobbies, creative endeavors that I do. I don't care about sports. And for some, I equate sport as their religion. That's all they want to talk about every day. It's, instead of being productive, they're doing, game pools for different things. And and I myself have been almost harassed and called names because I don't want to have the conversation about something I don't know anything about and don't have any interest in. And I
Yeah,
like that as an example because it doesn't portray any one religion or otherwise. But to me, in the workplace, as in the same way that I don't allow when I'm managing the employees, I don't allow them to bring in the candy bars from their kids raising money for the band. I don't allow any of that because we're here to do a job. And if you have a social life with folks out of the office, in the office, none of that stuff is appropriate.
yeah.
One other example, when I was with a company, we had an employee who insisted that in there we had a standard signature block that everybody used. And this guy went in and put "Have a blessed day" into the emails. Our company didn't represent any religious ideal. And it was beautiful thing that he wanted people to be blessed, but it didn't have a place in the signature line. And when we asked this guy to remove it, he said, "No, this is my right. It's my right." Well, you don't have the right to free speech when you're representing the company. At least that's my opinion. I don't know what you think of that.
Um, I I'm gonna expand this. I'm a big proponent of the separation of church and state.
And we agree on that.
And when I say expand on that, I think that, you know, politics and religion, I'll expand the church to include politics or any other special interests. If it's not directly relevant to the company, to the job, whatever, it has no place there.
Hmm.
Uh, was that guy, was he the owner of the company
No, it's
that
just he was
inserted it?
actually one of the designers and on the design
Who the
team.
fuck does he think he is
Yeah,
to
that's
speak for me
yeah,
or anybody else?
yeah. That was kind of my take on it. I delved into it and I asked him, and he got really upset because of the example that I used. But I said, what if we have an employee who's a devout Satanist and wants to put "Satan loves you" in their email? Not that I would think that would ever happen, but I wanted to go to an extreme.
Right.
His response back was, you're evil to even bring it up. And I said, well, I guess so, but I'm curious what you would do if you had an employee who was doing that. And he said, yeah, but what I'm putting is beautiful and what they're putting is evil. So mine's okay. There was no, I mean, he just absolutely had to have it in an email. So you know what
I
ended up happening? You know what they ended up doing is they went to this service that an online service that creates instead of giving somebody their
oh,
signature line, it was a forced signature line from a server that he couldn't alter anymore. And that was how they resolved the problem because he was an okay employee and he would protest at every meeting and say this is unfair, whatever. And eventually he created so much
I
of a guff that they got rid of him.
yeah, I would have fired him earlier. I
I
really I would have fired him earlier
yeah,
because he is a negative influence
yeah,
on the real corporate culture. The
yeah,
corporate culture is, what's the company about? What's the
yeah.
mission? What is the company uh, doing for its clients, its customers?
Hmm.
Uh, and again, you know, that has no place.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, one of the arguments really that wasn't made but should have been made to the guy is you are using a company piece of equipment and we have parameters as to how you're allowed to use that equipment. And you're
Yeah.
using company software and we have parameters of how you can use that software. You're not allowed just because you love to cuss in an email. You're not allowed to, but for some reason that never got involved in the conversation. But nonetheless, as soon as you're working for an organization that isn't as you described, a nonprofit, I could absolutely see that if you were working for a Jewish charity, um, and you're anti-Semitic, probably you don't belong there. I'm being sarcastic. You absolutely don't belong there. But in this particular case, again, going back to calling BS on politics and religion in the workplace, certainly in private conversations, people are going to talk about their religion, their politics in their clique and organization. When it becomes an interference to how that company can operate, if it damages the brand of the business, um, then things have to happen. And again, I'm going to be careful to not say who the company was. There's a company that I'm very aware of that their VP of sales was texting with an employee and they thought that they were joking back and forth with comments from Full Metal Jacket or something like that. And the guy had texted something super racist that was a line from that movie. And the person who was sitting next to them on the plane saw it and got a photo of it, and it went out on the internet. It went everywhere. Now, this is the ownership of the company, part of the family of the ownership of the company, head of sales for the company, now is being called on the carpet internationally. Tens of thousands of people saw these racist comments that he made, and the company had to deal with it. And certainly the company's response was to remove their own family member, make it clear this is one guy completely not condoned by our business. It doesn't represent the business, but I'm aware that when it went public, many of their Black employees walked off the job for a day in protest of this guy being part of it. I mean, it was a huge thing.
Okay, you want to hear what my reaction to that is?
Go
Number
for it.
one, number one, he was stupid for holding his phone in such a way that somebody that he doesn't know sitting next to him on a plane could see it and
Mm-hmm.
actually snap a photo. That
Yeah.
that in itself
Yeah.
pretty is pretty stupid.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, I believe in, when somebody says, "Oh, I was just joking."
Yeah.
No, you weren't.
Yeah.
No, you weren't.
Well, every joke starts with a semblance of
If
truth.
you're, yeah, if
Yeah.
of all the lines that you could quote from that movie,
Mm-hmm.
that that's not one of them. It clearly shows what you're thinking
Mm-hmm.
on a
Yeah.
number of levels.
Well, don't misunderstand. I'm not supporting the guy.
Yeah, number
I'm
one, he's
completely. I think the company response to fire him immediately and let the world know
yeah,
this isn't who we are, what we represent, is the right
nepotism
response.
gone bad.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but and again, these are extreme examples. But I shouldn't know when I show up at work and sit down at the table to work with the team around me, unless somebody asks me separately to have that conversation. And I'm guilty of it. I've made uh, political statements that are related to the market. This particular group of political ideology has made decisions that cause these damages to the market, um, in terms of strategy, in terms of forecasting, in terms of marketing, so that we can attract all of that. We have those conversations where they're appropriate to the growth of the business. But I'm not going to have a situation where my employees are getting into arguments and fights and being polarized because those guys over at that table in the cafeteria support X and those guys support Y and they hate each other. It's not good for the culture of the business. It's not good for the brand. And I call BS on it. I'll say.
Absolutely. It, leave the politics and religion at the door.
Yep. That's a good way to put it. So anyhow, as we wrap it up with those conclusions, thanks everybody for joining us for the We Call BS. I'd love to see opinions in the notes if you got comments or things to say that won't get you in trouble at work, or that will. I don't care. It's not my problem if you put it there. Like, subscribe, fax, telex. I don't know. Whatever you need to do to promote
Smoke
the podcast.
signals.
Yeah.
Although I don't, yeah. Or what is it? The Morse code. You can send a telegram.
Yeah.
Uh, I've forgotten Morse code. Don't read smoke signals, but other,
Dots and dashes. Dots and dashes.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for joining us. I hope all the multitudes that are joining
Yeah.
to watch our podcast. We try to keep it short and pithy. And signing off until this time next week.
See y'all soon. Bye now.